and it's currently running still, we're going to evaluate the model. And a very common metric in evaluating models is actually something that's called AUC. And that's actually what we are printing at the bottom here when it's done. So it's going to go and calculate what's called an ROC. And I'm not going to go into the details of this, but a very common metric is then to say, I'm going to take the area under the ROC that we will plot, and I'm going to plot that, because what that means, that what that value can give us is that if it's 1, it pretty much means that the model gets 100% of the predictions right. And I have to tell you that if you would get an AUC metric of 1, let's say on your first try, you should be worried. Usually, most models, even good performing models, probably range on 98, 99%, at least below 1, but still very, very close. So you see that this is a pretty decent model. This is the accuracy of this could be referred to as approximately 98% accurate. So it's a pretty decent model that we have, especially for the first try. So definitely a model that we can work with. And as you see here in the last one, and you can plot this as well if you want to run it. It's kind of just showing the actual ROC plot with the ROC curve. Now I'm not going to go more into those details because we did our modeling, and from here, let's say if you reach the steps of you're happy with the model, what you can do is that you can actually use some open source code. You can, if you want to, you can convert this into an ONNX format, for example, or not convert it into an ONNX format. But what you can do is that you can track it and store it in a model registry if you want to. And the way that we do things from Synapse is that you can actually leverage the Azure Machine Learning Model Registry. And pretty easily, as I'll show you in a little bit, you'll be able to log that model in a model registry to use later. For example, let's say you can store it there, and you can actually deploy it from there then to various different targets. For example, as a web service, so that you can consume this model from your applications, for example. So the modeling piece is done, and I hope that you were able to follow along and kind of run through these cells together with me, and kind of get the results of this modeling experience. Now, this is one way, obviously, to build a model. And in Synapse and in the Synapse workspace, you'll actually have other options to do this, but let's say with less focus on you writing the code. So that's actually what I wanted to show you next as a bonus. And for this next section, you actually don't have to follow along because I've done some prerequisite steps to set this up. So unless you have an Azure Machine Learning workspace and a linked service and those things already prepared and created, I think you should just kind of look at the next section and don't need to follow along. All right, so what we can do next is that we can actually use the same data set that we used right here, but we can actually leverage an experience that doesn't really require a ton of coding to be able to get a good performing model. So for that, I'm going to navigate to my data hub. And in my data hub, I'm going to navigate to my Spark database here. And what I've actually done here is that the New York Taxi data set that we were working with, I actually saved that data set prior to this as a Spark table. And what I can do from here is that I can actually right click on New York Taxi train. I can select machine learning and say, I want to enrich this with a new model. And this essentially means I want to train a new model. And this is going to launch an experience for you, as you see that I have here, where it's going to leverage automated machine learning to train a model on the same data set. And what the magic of automated machine learning is that it's kind of like an automated data scientist, but not entirely, right? I still need to be able to evaluate my models. I still kind of need to, it still needs to be a human in the loop, but you would be more of a kind of supervising role. You would not necessarily write every line of code that's training the model, but you would kind of need to evaluate the model still and be able to understand those metrics. So what we're going to do here is that the first thing I do is that I need to provide an Azure Machine Learning workspace that I have linked. And prior to this, I created a linked service in my workspace, so I have that, so I can select that. It's